Hey guys, what's up? Fan here again, and today I'm bringing you guys another video, and this time it's going to be a post-patch impression of the current patch that we are on, and this is of course the patch that brought in the Butcher as well as Battlefield of Eternity, the new map. So I'm going to just go down the list here on the patch notes for the June 30th patch and just really quickly kind of let you guys know what I think about all the major changes that happened. This is going to be kind of like my initial impressions on the patch and how it's going to kind of shift the gameplay going forward. So looking at the start here, we have a new talent, Vampiric Strike. It basically is a version of Vampiric Assault that's on melee heroes, and basically melee heroes get 10% more lifesteal than ranged heroes. I think this is not going to be used very often. It's not really a big deal. Um, Moving on, we have Blood for Blood. Now, the Blood for Blood change was actually a pretty substantial change. Um, Basically, Blood for Blood used to apply a 30% slow. It no longer does that. The damage also decreased from 15% to 10%, while the healing increased from you used to heal 15% of the target's maximum health, so you heal in damage exactly what you dealt. Now you heal 20% of that target's maximum health, but you only deal 10% damage. So Blood for Blood became a more defensive item, whereas in the previous patch it was very much so an aggressive talent meant for kind of blowing up heroes, and the slow was also very useful in cases where you would chase heroes down and whatnot. Now this change is major, and there's been quite a few people who think that the Blood for Blood change, along with the Envenom change, which I'll get to in a second, that these two changes combined really lower the kind of burst damage output of a lot of heroes that have them, such as Sylvanas, such as Kerrigan, along with other heroes. And that's kind of true, but at the same time, I feel like people are kind of overestimating the changes. A lot of people just no longer get Blood for Blood or Envenom on a lot of the heroes, and I still think that for a lot of the heroes that these two choices are, good picks. They used to be picks that you absolutely had to have, like there was no other option that would be better in any case ever. Now I think in some situations you might find like a better talent on some heroes. So a good example of this is Sylvanas. The damage amplification on her W now competes with Blood for Blood. It used to be that you just got Blood for Blood all the way no matter what. But I think on a lot of other heroes, like such as Kerrigan and Vala, like Blood for Blood is still by far the best talent. Just because it swapped from being a more offensive to defensive talent doesn't mean that it's bad, which is what I think a lot of people think right now. And I think that, Blood for Blood is still a very, very strong talent. Not quite as strong as it used to be, but it's still very strong. It used to be overpowered, and now it's just really good. And I think that for a lot of heroes, you should still be picking Blood for Blood. Same thing for Envenom. Envenom basically duration doubled, but damage was not changed. And especially for Envenom, like almost no one likes picking Envenom anymore on a lot of the heroes that used to have Envenom. But I think, there is once again an overreaction in terms of not picking this talent. You have to realize that, yeah, there are cases where, like, if their healer reaches them or if they fountain tap in time in the early game, your Envenom procs no longer get the kill where it used to. But at the same time, like, Venom was an overpowered skill. It was almost always picked on, you know, majority of heroes that got it. And the damage of Envenom has not changed, and the cooldown of Envenom has not changed. So I think those two are some very important factors, and Envenom is still, fairly strong and still packs a good amount of damage. And you have to think about it in the terms of damage. Like if you go on someone and their healer reaches them and tosses them the heal, the envenom it still does damage. The heal will negate the envenom, but the envenom still does the damage. So you kind of think about it like if you didn't have an envenom and the healer tosses your target a heal, all of a sudden your target would be at full HP, right? Whereas if you have the envenom, the heal just cancels out the envenom and doesn't, add any more HP to your target. So I think you should still pick envenom on a lot of heroes that get it. So think about heroes like Sylvanas, heroes like Kerrigan, even like Butcher. I think Envenom is a really powerful skill on him, and no one is really even trying it out right now just because of this duration nerf, which I think is over exaggerated. So, yeah, overall in Venom, yes, it is nowhere near as good as it was last patch, but I think the overreaction is very real right now of not picking it ever on any hero. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. I think it's still a good pick on a majority of heroes that get it. So, yep, that's my thoughts on Envenom, at least for now. Promote is pretty much dead at this point. Basically now heroes can just deal with promote instantly, and the only time promote gets the same value as it did pre-patch is when there's no heroes in that lane whatsoever, and that's just not going to happen very often. The one exception to this is like Asmodan with the promote because he can cast it globally. So you can always choose the lane which doesn't have a hero or which has the highest chance of not having a hero in the lane. So, promote on Asmodan's level 4 talent still pretty good. On pretty much everyone else, it's nowhere near as good anymore. In fact, it's just really bad on every other hero. So promote's pretty much dead, which a lot of people think is a good thing for the game. Protective Shield now shields for 15% of the target's maximum health. I think this is a good change. Basically, it means that Protective Shield shields squishy targets, such as your range carries and maybe some of your squishier supports. It shields them for less than it used to. But now it shields tanks and some of your more, just high HP targets for more than it used to. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic where you know, it used to be that, your carries could really get out of position and like be really far up, and you would just spam your heal, your proto shield, and they would go from like no HP to like full HP instantly. So I think this is a good change. It kind of makes a lot of sense in my opinion, and I like it as far as the change is concerned. I'm looking forward to seeing the new Proto Shield. I think, by and large, it'll still be used the same way. Like, if your carry's out of position, you'll still put it on him. The only exception is that now it's less effective on carries, so your carries have less incentive to be like really postured up front. And you have more incentive to cast it on your tanks. Because it's way more effective on high HP targets. So, overall, as a team, you're going to have a lot more incentive to really get in position, to really cast your Proto Shield on the right targets, as opposed to just spamming it on anyone who's low. And yeah, I think it adds a level of strategy to the game, which I like. Next thing I wanted to touch on is Conjurer's Pursuit as well as Regen Master. So, not going to talk much about these, but basically what happened to both Conjurer's Pursuit and Regen Master is that it got nerfed in the early game and the mid game. So it's weaker early to mid game, and then late game, after you get a certain number of globes, it starts being stronger than it was last patch. I don't remember the exact number, but I think it's around maybe like 30 or 40 globes is where this new Conjurers and this new Regen Master becomes stronger than the old one. But yeah, basically, I don't remember the exact math, but it's early weaker game, or sorry, it's weaker early game, weaker mid game, and stronger late game once you hit that like 30 to 40 globes, acquired. So the last thing here is spell shield. Duration was increased from 2 seconds to 3 seconds. I think this is actually a major buff. Like if you think about it, it's only a 1 second increase. It's not that big of a deal. Well, it's actually like a 50% increase in terms of just the duration of the spell shield, which is actually pretty darn important. Especially in the current metagame where you have like spell damage is king. Think about your Kel'Thas, think about Jaina, Asmodan, just all these damage sources from assassins. Most of it comes from spell damage, and a lot of different heroes have spell shield, and spell shield is better than ever now. I definitely recommend you take it if you're going up against like a Kel'Thas or a Jaina or an Asmodan. Yeah, it's just really, really good right now. 50% damage mitigation for 3 seconds. It activates every 30 seconds. It's pretty darn good right now. Moving on to the hero changes. First one is Illidan. So Illidan really got hit hard by this patch. What they did was they removed the Unstoppable on his Q and W. Um, and they also made these changes. Metamorphosis no longer deals damage, basically, and its radius was decreased by 25%. And considering it's a circle, that's actually a huge deal. The new Metamorphosis circle is very, very small. So basically, what I think about Illidan is last patch I think he was borderline overpowered. Now this patch I think he's situationally good. So I think he's good if you have the right comp for him. But at the same time, you need to be very, very practiced with Illidan now, in my opinion. You have to really know his cooldowns, really know his limits, and really understand how to use the hero effectively. Um, because, the hero is just not forgiving at all anymore. Previous patch, you could kind of just, Q to dodge stuns, W to dodge stuns. You could press R, and it was very, very easy. Whoops, it was very, very easy to hit like 3 to 5 targets, and if you did that, you just instantly won the fight. This patch, the new metamorphosis, first of all, it doesn't do damage. Second of all, the radius is small, so it's like actually very, very hard to hit more than I would say three heroes. I'd say three heroes is already like very good in the new patch, and hitting five people with metamorphosis now against like a good team is basically impossible. So yeah, very heavy nerfs to Illidan. I think if you really understand him and you have a comp that goes well with him, he is still situationally good, but definitely not overpowered or borderline overpowered as he was last patch. And moving on here. We have Jaina. So Jaina's sprint was removed, but Water Elemental can now be targeted after Jaina is killed. Now I think this is actually a buff to Jaina, because while the sprint nerf does hurt, especially if you were playing kind of like the flanking style of Jaina, where you kind of went around their team, you caught onto their squishies, and then you just casted your combo on one of their squishy targets, and then you sprinted on out of there. That style of Jaina is kind of nerfed a lot because you don't have sprint anymore, so you can't really sprint out of there anymore. Uh, but I think that's entirely made up by the fact that they made this change that Water Elemental can be retargeted after Jaina is killed. Right now, I think very few Jaina players utilize their Water Elemental properly. They kind of just cast it and then they don't worry about it anymore at all. But you have to realize that Water Elemental is by far the strongest summon in the game right now, and it's like I would say its power is borderline on a hero. Like it feels like 6 versus 5 when you have a water elemental in a team fight and you're utilizing it properly. Um, so this is really good. And basically, even though sprint was removed, I think you can still make the flanking style of Jaina work, where you kind of, you go in, you blow up one of their squishy targets, and even if you die, as long as you properly micro your water elemental to make sure that it doesn't die, like it still feels like a 5v4 battle, right? You trade out for one of them, but you leave a water elemental into the fight, whereas they don't have anything else in the fight. And your water elemental has a very long duration. Uh, if you micro it properly, it like slows down the entire team. It does decent auto attack damage. Just really, really super annoying. And the fact that you can get it to go on the optimal targets even after you die, in my opinion, is just an absolutely huge buff to Jaina. There's also a few other cases where you can just stay with your team now as Jaina, and it makes it the enemy team not even really want to dive you because even if they kill you, as long as your water elemental is still in the fight, that's something that's going to be slowing the enemy team by 35% with an AoE auto attack. Uh, that's just going to be constantly battering at them, right? So it's like it's just such a mess. I think Jaina is one of the best heroes in the game right now, and yeah, even pre-patch, I think she was definitely one of the best heroes in the game, and post-patch, I think she only got stronger. Moving on, Kerrigan. Kerrigan's Ultralisk can now be retargeted after Kerrigan is killed. I think this is also a good change. One note was that the level 20 upgrade for the Ultralisk, I had a lot of problems when I first started using it because basically what would happen is I would go in as Kerrigan to a team fight, I would use my Ultralisk, and then I would die, so my hero, the Kerrigan hero, would die. And then I would die, And then basically the level 20 upgrade for Ultralisk makes your Ultralisk into an egg, and after like 10 seconds, your Ultralisk respawns. And after my Ultralisk respawns, like 9 times out of 10, the fight would have moved on to another place, and my Ultralisk would just stand there and it would do absolutely nothing for the entirety of the respawn. So that made like that level 20 talent absolutely useless. So yeah, I can see a few fringe cases where now you can actually take the Ultralisk level 20 talent, and I think that just taking Ultralisk overall will be a lot more acceptable on Kerrigan now. Previously, almost no one took it, but I think that Ultralisk actually is not bad, and after this, I think it only got better, and I would take Ultralisk maybe like I would say like 30 to 40% of the time, and Maelstrom like 60 to 70% of the time, which is more than I could say last patch. So pretty cool there. Unfortunately, Kerrigan did get kind of nerfed in terms of her burst damage because of the Envenom nerf, and as well as the Blood for Blood nerf. So both of those nerfed her burst damage, which sucks because she's a melee assassin that wants to instantly kill someone. Um, and also her Q lost her unstoppable as well, which also really sucks because so before this patch you could like Q onto a Kel'Thas, and you would be unstoppable on the way there. So you would have a guaranteed Q onto like a Kel'Thas, right? And then you could just throw your combo and he'd be dead. But this patch, if you Q onto a Kel'Thas and the Kel'Thas sees you and he throws his E at you, that E is actually going to cancel your Q. So you're going to be lifted up halfway through your Q. And that could pose a potentially very big problem sometimes. Um, so yeah, that's like another nerf to Kerrigan where the Q no longer has unstoppable, and there's just a bunch of different situations where that kind of nerfs her a little bit. So overall, I think Kerrigan got nerfed. Uh, in three different places: one, the Q unstoppable; two, Envenom burst damage; three, Blood for Blood burst damage. So she's a little weaker than she was, but still viable. Moving on, Nova, it's really not much of a change. Rainer's Raiders can be retargeted, which is cool, but no one uses Rainer right now, so whatever. And Tychus, basic attack range matches other heroes. It's nice, but it's not that big of a deal. Melting Point kind of got nerfed. It got buffed in the really early game, but I think from level 7 onwards, I don't remember if that's the exact level, but I think it's from level 7 onwards. Melting Point gets weaker and weaker, and if you think about that, you hit level 7 pretty fast in the game. So I think overall, Melting Point got nerfed, which kind of sucks because it was one of his best 4 talents. Let's see. The laser drill can be retargeted after Tychus is killed once again. It's pretty cool, but I don't think that one is particularly game changing. At least not like the water elemental one. So Zeratul got Vampiric Assault. I've never seen any Zeratools take Vampiric Assault, so I don't think that really matters either, or Vampiric Strike. And moving on here, couple minor changes for Abathur. I don't think this really matters. Asmodean, like I said, the Bound Minion, this is basically the same promote nerf, but since Bound Minion is global, it actually makes it so that this is not as big of a nerf as the promote nerf was. So this is actually still a good skill, whereas all the other promotes are kind of garbage now. And Murky, you can see some minor damage increases, and Living the Dream got nerfed. Not much to say about that. I don't play much Murky, so I'm gonna go ahead and skip over that one. This is an interesting one for Nazeebo. So Leaping Spiders have had an AI improvement, which basically makes corpse spiders better stick to their targets. I haven't tested this too much, but I have a feeling that this actually makes Nazeebo dramatically better. Just looking at the last AI change, the last AI change Blizzard did was for Anubarak's beetles, and that made like a world of difference. Like the new Anubarak beetles compared to the old ones, it made his win rate go up drastically. It made the hero just way, way better. So, if this is anything like that, I feel like Nazeebo is going to be quite a bit better. Um, but I haven't played around too much with it, so that's just kind of one of my theories. Moving on, we have Sylvanas. Unstable poison can no longer. Basically, what this changes is that it used to be if you stood in a creep wave that was affected by unstable poison and the creep wave just all exploded, you would take like basically your entire life bar worth of damage from all the unstable poison explosions from each of the creep minions. and that can no longer happen. You know, you can't just be blown up instantly if you're in a creep wave anymore. You can only get affected by one instance of unstable affliction at the same time. So kind of a minor nerf to Black Arrow or to unstable poison, but it's not too big of a deal. The main reason you got unstable poison is to push, not for those kind of lucky, blow ups. So not that big of a deal. Possession got reworked. It's better now, but if you read it, it's still nowhere near good enough to be used. It's just not strong enough. It's like 12-second recharge time, which I think is way, way too long. And overall, you you can't possess minion mercenaries very easily, and yeah, it's just not good enough. Like possessing one mercenary costs you 5 charges, and you only have seven. Like that is nowhere near good enough for an ultimate. And the last thing is Wailing Arrow. The damage actually got nerfed pretty substantially. You can see there's a 60 base damage nerf and 2 per level. Uh, so that's actually a pretty substantial damage nerf. Now Wailing Arrow is really more for silence than for damage, and Sylvanas, in my opinion, also got quite a bit weaker this patch because she got like four nerfs on four things that she took pretty much all the time. So once again, it's Envenom. You still take Envenom on Sylvanas, by the way. So that got nerfed in terms of burst damage. Blood for Blood got nerfed in terms of burst damage. Um, Unstable Poison got nerfed right here, and Willing Arrow got nerfed. So Sylvanas lost a ton of damage potential this patch, which made her quite a bit weaker, but she's definitely still viable. And I would say, I think she's still pretty good, but nowhere near like OP like she was last patch. Uh, Moving on, we have the Vikings. I'm not gonna talk too much about the Vikings. Basically, I think the Vikings are very likely bad now. They just got nerfed way too hard. They got the nerf hammer on pretty much everything. Some of the like random nerfs actually really affect them a lot, such as Olaf's healing out of combat got reduced by half. That really sucks. Eric's movement speed got reduced a lot, which really sucks. Go 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 movement speed got reduced a lot, which sucks. And there's just a whole bunch of other nerfs and talent reworks, which are basically nerfs. And basically, I think the only viable way to play Vikings right now is like just split them up and just soak the entire game with play again. And even then, it feels kind of weak. So I think Vikings are kind of dead. And if they're not dead, I think that play again split soak style is the only viable way to play it right now at a competitive level. Moving on, we have Zagara. Zagara has a interesting thing here where basically if the Hydralisk or the Mutalisk you spawn, if the primary target goes away or moves out of sight, the Hydra and the Muta actually don't despawn anymore, which is really nice because it used to be that it would just instantly despawn if the target died or went invulnerable or anything, but now it'll stick around and help you push lanes, help you clear more mercenary camps way better. So actually, I'd say this is like a decent buff for Zagara. Not sure if it's enough to make her really good, but it's a nice thing for sure. Um, all right. Lastly, I just want to cover the support section really, really quick here because I don't have much time left. But I'm not going to look at all of these, walls of text here. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you what I think is the tier list for supports in this current patch. And this comes from talking to a lot of great support players and watching them play, and just comparing supports and scrims and whatnot. So overall, I think right now the top support is Rhaegar. I think Rhaegar is by far the best support right now, and the reason is just because Rhaegar has both of what you really want as a support, and he has a lot of utility. So, the two main things you want as a support is you want sustained healing for your entire team. So like kind of AoE consistent healing. And the second thing you want is like burst healing for one target. You want sustained healing to deal with like poke damage. So think about damage from like Kel'Thas or Azmodan or like Valas or Psystorms, that kind of thing, any kind of poke damage. You want sustained consistent healing for. And the second thing is you want like just burst healing on one single target. And you want that obviously for going against comps that want to like just kill one target, right? So like the assassin type comps or like uh, the kind of chain stun comps where you have like a Kerrigan, a Tyrande, a Muradin, that kind of stuff. And basically, Rhaegar has both of these things, and he does both of them very, very well. Not to mention, at level 7, he just has like so many great things he can spec into. He's very versatile. You know, he can get Farsight for vision, he can get Cleanse, he can get um, a bunch of other stuff that just makes him a great versatile healer overall. So at the top of the list of supports right now, I think is definitely Rhaegar. Um, following Rhaegar, I would say it would be Uther and Malfurion on the next tier of supports. Both of them are similar, but they fulfill different roles. So Malfurion has really great, like, consistent AoE healing. So but he has like no burst healing whatsoever, right? So if your opponents pick Malfurion and you have like a comp that involves like either a ton of burst damage, think about like Tyrael Falstad, or like Nova, Jaina, all any kind of huge amount of single target damage. Or if you have like chain stuns such as like Kerrigan, Murd, and Tyrande, if you have any of those heroes, Malfurion can't deal with that because he has no like he has no single target burst healing. On the other hand, Uther has really great single target burst healing. He can deal with all of that, but he can't deal sustained AoE healing like Malfurion can. So if you're playing Uther, the counter to Uther is just like AoE poke, like KT, Asmo, any kind of consistent AoE damage. Uther cannot keep the entire team up. His heals just aren't equipped for that. So that's why they're on the next tier. I would say they're about equal. If you need consistent AoE healing, Malfurion's better. If you need burst healing on a single target, Uther's way better. So those two are kind of both behind Rhaegar. And then lastly, I would put Brightwing and Lily on the last tier. Um, haven't played around with Brightwing too much, but like a lot of people that I know have been saying that Brightwing just sucks now, and I'm not too surprised. They removed a lot of what was great about Brightwing before. Brightwing's passive used to heal double what it does now, I believe, and you know that used to make it so that no one could trade with her in lane, or if she was in a tri lane, no one could ever trade with that tri lane. On top of that, right, they removed promote, which was good because she was global. They removed protective shield, which was really important. They removed, Envenom. They just removed a bunch of stuff and gave her a complete rework. And yeah, it seems like that the rework Brightwing kind of sucks. That's the general consensus that I've been getting after talking to all the other people. So I think that's about it for now. Once again, the kind of support tier is Rhaegar on top, Malfurion and Uther below Rhaegar, depending on what you need, and then Brightwing and Lily on the very bottom. So yeah, that's about all. There's some very minor warrior changes here. I guess Anubrak, this warrior change made it so that Anubrak is now, he used to be in the top tanks. He used to be right up there with Murden and Johanna, but this is actually a significant enough nerf with the damage nerf as well as the beetle nerfs. It's significant enough to make him fall down. Now he is not as good as the other top tier tanks. He is not as good as Murden or Johanna, and I think Murden and Johanna are easily the two best tanks right now in the game. Um, and yeah, other than that, there's really nothing else. That's about it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know I haven't been making too many videos recently because I've been very busy, but uh, I think I'll have a lot more time to make more videos, so expect them on a more regular basis. Next one should be about Butcher skill build. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you have any comments, please leave them in the section below, and I'll try to get back to you guys as soon as possible. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.